The late afternoon sun filtered through the large windows of the lake house, casting golden patterns across the wooden floor. Tom stretched his arms above his head and yawned, feeling the pleasant tiredness that came after a long drive from the city. This weekend getaway with his girlfriend and friends was exactly what he needed after weeks of stressful work deadlines. "Hey, come check this out," his girlfriend Lily called from another room. Her voice held that excited tone she got whenever she discovered something interesting. Tom followed her voice through the sprawling lake house his parents had owned since before he was born. He found her in what his family had always called the music room, though no one in his immediate family actually played any instruments. The room was mostly used for storage these days, with boxes stacked in corners and old furniture draped with white sheets. But in the center of the room, commanding attention despite a thin layer of dust, stood a beautiful upright piano. Its dark wood gleamed where Lily had wiped away some of the dust with her sleeve. "I didn't know your family had a piano," she said, running her fingers lightly across the closed key cover. Tom shrugged. "It was my grandmother's. Nobody's played it in years." He walked over and lifted the cover, revealing ivory keys yellowed with age. He pressed one, and a slightly out-of-tune note rang through the room. "Probably needs some work." Their friends Dave and Maya appeared in the doorway carrying bags of snacks and drinks. "Cool piano," Dave said, setting down his bags. "Anyone know how to play?" Before Tom could answer, he caught a flicker of something cross Lily's face, a mix of recognition and what almost looked like longing. It was gone so quickly he might have imagined it. "Lily does," Tom said with a playful smile, remembering something she'd mentioned on their third date almost a year ago, or at least she claimed she did. Lily rolled her eyes. "I took lessons as a kid." "That hardly counts. How long did you take lessons?" Maya asked, sitting down on a dusty armchair and opening a bag of chips. 8 years, Lily admitted, looking somewhat embarrassed. 8 years? Tom laughed. "That's not took lessons as a kid. That's practically professional training." Lily tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a habit Tom had come to recognize as a sign she was feeling uncomfortable. "I was never that good. And anyway, I haven't played in forever." "Come on," Tom said, pulling out the piano bench and patting it. "Show us what you've got." "Seriously, Tom, it's been years." Lily crossed her arms. "And the piano's out of tune." "Just one song," he insisted with a grin. "Unless you were making it all up to impress me on our date." He meant it as a joke, but the moment the words left his mouth, he saw a flash of hurt in her eyes. Something twisted in his chest, but before he could backtrack, a competitive spark replaced the hurt in her expression. "Fine," she said, walking over to the bench. "One song." Tom stepped back, still smiling. He loved these little moments of friendly competition between them. Lily had surprised him more than once with hidden talents. She was an incredible dart player and could recite poetry from memory, but he had a feeling her piano skills might be exaggerated. 8 years of childhood lessons or not, nobody stayed good at something they hadn't practiced in years. Dave whooped encouragingly, and Maya leaned forward in her chair. 2 more of their friends, Jun and Kelly, wandered in, drawn by the commotion. "What's happening?" Jun asked. "Lily's about to give us a concert," Dave explained. "I am not giving a concert," Lily corrected firmly. "I'm playing one song to prove I'm not a liar, apparently." She shot Tom a look that was half annoyed, half playful. Tom responded with an exaggerated bow, sweeping his arm toward the piano. "The stage is yours," he said. As more friends gathered in the doorway, Lily's shoulders tensed. Tom hadn't meant to create such a spectacle, and a twinge of guilt made him consider calling it off. But then Lily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment she just sat there, staring at the ivory rectangles as if they were written in a language she was struggling to remember. Tom was about to make a joke to break the increasing tension when she closed her eyes. The sun had shifted, and now it illuminated her face, giving her skin a warm glow. With her eyes closed and her hands poised over the keys, she looked different somehow, focused in a way Tom hadn't seen before. A strange feeling settled in his stomach, something between curiosity and unease. Behind him, someone cleared their throat. Kelly whispered something to Jun, who chuckled softly. The moment stretched, and Tom wondered if Lily was going to back out after all. Then her fingers moved. The first notes filled the room, tentative and uncertain. Tom recognized the beginning of a simple tune, something that might be taught to beginners. He relaxed a little, a small smile playing on his lips. This was about what he'd expected. Basic skills, rusty from disuse. Nothing spectacular. But then, like a stream gathering strength as it flows downhill, her playing changed. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently. The simple melody transformed, becoming richer, more complex. Notes cascaded from her fingertips, filling the room with sound that seemed impossible from the old, slightly out-of-tune piano. Tom's smile faded. He stared at Lily's hands, moving with assurance across the keys, creating music that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. This wasn't beginner piano. This wasn't even intermediate. Lily played like someone who had devoted thousands of hours to mastering the instrument. The room had gone completely silent except for the music. Even the usual creaks and sighs of the old lake house seemed to have paused to listen. Tom glanced around and saw his friends' faces mirroring his own surprise. Dave's mouth hung slightly open. Maya had set aside her chips, all attention on Lily, and Lily herself had transformed. The slight awkwardness that sometimes clung to her in social situations had vanished. Her back was straight, her head tilted slightly as she listened to her own playing. A small smile curved her lips, not for them but for herself, for the music she was creating. Tom felt something shift inside him. He'd known Lily for over a year, had fallen in love with her laugh, her kindness, the way she could get lost in a good book for hours. But this person at the piano was a Lily he'd never met before. Confident, passionate, completely in her element. And he had treated this part of her, this beautiful, skillful part, as a joke. As the music swelled, filling every corner of the dusty room, Tom's cheeks burned with shame. His teasing suddenly seemed childish, dismissive of something that clearly meant more to Lily than she had let on. Why had she downplayed this talent? Why had she kept this part of herself hidden away? The questions multiplied in his mind as the music continued to flow. Lily's fingers danced across the keys, bringing to life melodies that seemed to tell stories without words. Joyful runs gave way to thoughtful, slower passages that made something catch in Tom's throat. He found himself holding his breath, afraid that any movement might break the spell. The late afternoon light caught dust motes swirling in the air above the piano, making them look like tiny stars dancing to Lily's music. In that moment, Tom realized he had never really seen Lily before, not completely. He had fallen in love with a version of her that she allowed the world to see. But there were depths he hadn't even suspected. What else didn't he know about the woman he thought he understood so well? The thought both humbled and excited him. It was like discovering a hidden room in a house he thought he had fully explored, a room filled with treasure. As Lily's playing reached a crescendo, Tom felt a strange mix of emotions. Regret for having pushed her into performing as a joke, gratitude for being allowed to witness this hidden talent, and a renewed sense of wonder about the person he loved. He had driven her to play the piano as a joke, but after just 10 seconds he regretted it, not because she couldn't play, but because she could play so beautifully that it made him question how well he really knew her, and how many other wonderful things about her he might have missed or dismissed without a second thought. The final notes hung in the air, resonating through the room and through Tom. For a moment no one moved or spoke. It was as if they all needed time to return from whatever place Lily's music had taken them. Then slowly, Lily opened her eyes. The confidence that had transformed her while she played didn't immediately disappear. But Tom could see the familiar self-consciousness creeping back in as she became aware of everyone staring at her. She looked up and met his gaze, a question in her eyes. The room erupted in applause, breaking the silence. Cheers and exclamations filled the air where music had been moments before. That was amazing. Why didn't you tell us you could play like that? Are you secretly a concert pianist or something? The questions came from all directions, but Tom remained silent, still processing what he had just witnessed. Still wrestling with the realization that he had turned something precious into a punchline. Lily accepted the praise with a small, shy smile, but her eyes kept returning to Tom, waiting for his reaction. He knew he needed to say something, to bridge the gap between the Lily he thought he knew and this newly revealed version of her. But the words wouldn't come. How could he explain that in pushing her to play, he had inadvertently pushed her to show him how wrong he had been about her? How could he tell her that her music had both humbled him and made him fall in love with her all over again? As their friends continued to praise her playing, asking questions about her training and why she had stopped. Tom moved closer to the piano. When he reached Lily's side, he simply placed his hand on her shoulder and squeezed gently. "I had no idea," he said softly, just for her ears. "You're incredible." The smile she gave him then, part relief, part lingering confidence from her performance, made his heart skip a beat. It was like seeing the sun emerge from behind clouds, revealing a landscape in an entirely new light, and Tom knew, with sudden clarity, that he wanted to see every hidden part of Lily, to truly know her in all her complexity, even if it meant discovering how wrong he had been about other things, even if it meant admitting he had been a fool, because some mistakes he was beginning to understand could lead to the most beautiful discoveries. The applause finally died down, leaving an unusual quiet in the lake house. Tom stood next to the piano, his hand still resting on Lily's shoulder, feeling the warmth of her through the thin fabric of her shirt. Their friends were looking at her with new eyes, just as he was. "I need a drink after that performance," Dave announced, breaking the moment. "Anyone else?" The group murmured in agreement and began drifting toward the kitchen, leaving Tom and Lily alone with the piano. Tom sat down on the bench beside her, their shoulders touching. For a moment, neither spoke. "Why did you hide this?" Tom finally asked, gesturing to the piano. "You're amazing." Lily ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. "I didn't hide it exactly. It just never came up. 8 years of lessons never came up." Tom raised an eyebrow. "You mentioned it once, like it was some small thing from your childhood." "Not like this," she shrugged, still not meeting his eyes. "People get weird when they find out you can do something well. They either expect constant performances or they get intimidated. It's easier to just not mention it." Tom felt a twist of guilt. Hadn't he just proven her point? He'd turned her skill into a spectacle, pushed her to perform for their friends. But there was something else bothering him. "Is that why you stopped playing? Because people got weird about it?" Lily's finger stilled on the keys. The late afternoon light caught the dust motes swirling around them, making the moment feel suspended in time. Tom could hear their friends laughing in the kitchen, the clink of bottles, but it seemed far away. "No," she said finally. "That's not why I stopped." She took a deep breath and Tom waited. He'd known Lily for over a year, loved her for most of that time, but suddenly he felt like he was sitting next to a stranger, a beautiful, talented stranger who had hidden depths he'd never guessed at. "My grandmother taught me," Lily said. Her voice was soft, almost dreamy, as if she was speaking from inside a memory. "She was the one who insisted on lessons, who bought me my first piano. She was everything to me." Tom nodded, not wanting to interrupt. Lily had mentioned her grandmother before, but only in passing. He knew the woman had helped raise her, that they had been close, but little else. "She played beautifully," Lily continued. "Not like a professional or anything, but with so much heart. She could make that old upright in her living room sound like it belonged in a concert hall." A small smile touched her lips. "At least that's how it sounded to me." She played a few quiet notes, a simple melody that somehow carried both joy and sadness in its simplicity. "When I was little, I'd sit beside her on the bench just like this and watch her hands. They were old hands, you know, veins showing through the skin, spots from the sun, a little shaky sometimes. But when she played," Lily's voice caught. "When she played, they were young again, strong and sure." Tom reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. He'd never heard her talk like this before, with such raw emotion in her voice. "I wanted that," Lily said. "I wanted to make music the way she did. So I practiced, hours and hours every day. My parents thought I was crazy." She laughed softly. "Maybe I was. But Gran understood. She'd sit and listen to me practice, even when I was just doing scales over and over. She never got bored." The way she said it made Tom think someone else had gotten bored. "Her parents, maybe? Friends?" He squeezed her hand, encouraging her to continue. "When I was 16, she got sick. Cancer." Lily said the word flatly, all emotion drained from it. It happened fast, too fast. 1 month she was fine, the next... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Tom put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I played for her in the hospital," Lily said. "They wheeled in this little keyboard. It was nothing like her piano, but she wanted to hear me play, so I did, every day. The nurses said it was good for her, for the other patients too. Music therapy, they called it." Her voice had taken on a distant quality, as if she was no longer in the lake house but in that hospital room. Playing for her dying grandmother. The last time I played for her, she was not really there anymore. The medication had her pretty out of it. But I played anyway. Her favorite song. Lily's fingers moved on the keys, playing a melody Tom didn't recognize. It was gentle, wistful. When I finished, I looked up and she was gone. Tom tightened his arm around her. Lily, I'm so sorry. She leaned into him, accepting the comfort he offered. After the funeral, I just couldn't. Every time I sat at a piano, all I could think about was playing in that hospital room, watching her slip away. So I stopped. She looked at her hands, still resting on the keys. I packed up all my music, told my parents to give away my piano. I went to college, studied literature instead of music like I'd planned. And I just never played again. Until today, Tom said softly. Lily nodded. Until today. From the kitchen came the sound of laughter, a cork popping from a wine bottle. Life going on, oblivious to the confessions being shared in the music room. Thank you, Tom said. Lily looked up at him, puzzled. For what? For playing today. For sharing this with me. He gestured to the piano, but they both knew he meant more than that. He meant her story, her grief, the part of herself she'd locked away. I know I pushed you into it like an idiot, but I'm glad I got to hear you play. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Me too, actually. It felt good, like reconnecting with an old friend. Or with your grandmother, Tom suggested gently. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Yeah, like that too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, shoulders touching, the piano keys under their hands, connecting them to something larger than themselves. Tom thought about all the things we hide from the people we love, sometimes not even realizing we're doing it. All the pieces of ourselves we tuck away thinking they don't matter or won't be understood. Would you play something else? He asked finally. Just for me this time. Not as a joke or a challenge. Just because I'd love to hear it. Lily hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but this time no audience. Just us. Just us, Tom agreed. He started to stand to give her room on the bench, but she caught his hand. Stay, she said. Sit with me. Like I used to sit with her. Tom settled back on the bench, their sides pressed together from shoulder to knee. Lily positioned her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. This time there was no hesitation. No tentative beginning. She played with confidence, with joy, with all the emotion she'd kept bottled up for years. The music filled the room, spilled out into the hallway, drifted to the kitchen where their friends fell silent, listening. Tom watched her hands dance across the keys, creating beauty out of nothing but air and memory. He watched her face, transformed once again by the music, all self-consciousness gone. And he felt something shift between them, a deepening as if they'd crossed some invisible boundary into new territory. When Lily finished playing, she didn't immediately open her eyes. She sat still, hands resting on the final chord, letting the notes fade away naturally. Tom didn't speak, didn't move, afraid to break the spell. Finally, she turned to look at him, a question in her eyes. Well, it was beautiful, he said simply. You're beautiful. A blush spread across her cheeks. The music is beautiful. I'm just the messenger. Tom shook his head. No, it's you. The music is in you, Lily. It always has been, even when you weren't playing. She looked at him with wonder, as if he'd said something profound, though he was just speaking the truth as he saw it. I've missed it, she admitted quietly. Playing, making music, being this version of myself. Then don't stop again, Tom said. Keep playing. Here at home, wherever. I want to know this Lily, too. Their friends had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the music. They hung back, not wanting to intrude, but their faces showed the same wonder Tom felt. Dinner's ready, Maya called softly. But we can wait if you want to keep playing. Lily looked at the piano, then at Tom, then at their waiting friends. Tom could see her weighing something in her mind. Actually, she said, maybe after dinner I could play a bit more. If everyone wants to listen. The enthusiastic response from their friends made her laugh, a sound as musical as her playing had been. As they all headed to the kitchen, Tom held Lily back for a moment. Are you sure? He asked. You don't have to perform if you don't want to. Lily smiled, and there was a new confidence in her expression. I'm not performing. I'm sharing something I love with people I care about. There's a difference. Tom nodded, feeling both chastened and proud. Chastened because he'd reduced her talent to a performance, a trick to be shown off. Proud because she was reclaiming something precious, something she'd lost. Besides, she added, taking his hand, it feels right. Like Gran would approve. I'm sure she would, Tom said, squeezing her hand. As they joined their friends for dinner, the piano waited in the music room. No longer dusty and forgotten, but alive with possibility. And Tom couldn't help but think that what had started as a thoughtless joke had somehow turned into a gift. For Lily, for himself, for everyone who would now get to hear the music that had been silent for too long. He had driven her to play the piano as a joke, and after 10 seconds he had regretted it. But now, watching Lily laugh and talk with their friends, a new light in her eyes, he was grateful for that moment of regret. Sometimes, he was learning, our mistakes could lead us to exactly where we needed to be. Dinner that night was unlike any other they'd shared at the lake house. The usual rowdy conversations and inside jokes were replaced by something gentler, more attentive. Tom noticed how everyone kept glancing at Lily with new interest, as if seeing her for the first time. He felt a strange mix of pride and protectiveness watching her under their friends' curious gazes. The table had been set out on the sprawling back deck overlooking the lake. Strings of lights hung overhead, creating a warm glow as darkness settled around them. The water reflected the last colors of sunset, turning from gold to deep blue. So, June said, refilling Lily's wine glass, did you ever perform? Like professionally? Lily shook her head, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. No, nothing like that. Just recitals at my teacher's studio, school talent shows, that kind of thing. But you could have, Kelly insisted. You're that good. Tom watched a familiar discomfort flicker across Lily's face. She'd never been good at accepting compliments, always deflecting or downplaying. But tonight something was different. She didn't immediately dismiss the praise. I considered it, she admitted, surprising Tom. Before, everything happened with my grandmother. I'd applied to music schools, had auditions lined up. This was news to Tom. In all their conversations about college and career paths, she'd never mentioned this alternate future she'd once planned. What happened? Meyer asked, then caught herself. I mean, I know what happened with your grandmother, but the auditions... Lily took a sip of wine before answering. I canceled them. All of them. My senior year of high school was a blur. I was just going through the motions. When acceptance letters came from regular colleges, I picked one at random. Packed up my life and left home without looking back. The table was quiet. Even Dave, usually quick with a joke to break tension, seemed to understand the weight of what Lily was sharing. Do you regret it? Tom asked softly. Everyone looked at him, then at Lily. She considered the question, her eyes drifting to the darkening lake. I don't know, she said finally. Until today I would have said no. I made a choice. Life went on. I found other things I enjoyed. Literature, teaching. She glanced at Tom with a small smile. Other people I loved. Tom felt warmth spread through his chest at her words, at the quiet acknowledgement of what they'd built together. But playing today, Lily continued, it felt like finding a piece of myself I'd forgotten was missing. So maybe there is some regret there. Not for the path I chose, but for what I gave up along the way. The honesty in her voice touched something in all of them. Tom saw nods around the table, understanding glances. Everyone had roads not taken, versions of themselves left behind. Well, Dave said, raising his glass, to finding lost pieces. They all raised their glasses. To finding lost pieces, they echoed. As they finished dinner, the conversation drifted to other topics, but there was an undercurrent of thoughtfulness that remained. Tom found himself watching Lily more closely than usual, noticing small things he'd overlooked before, the graceful way her fingers moved as she talked, the rhythm in her speech, the way she sometimes tapped out patterns on the table when thinking. Had music been there all along, just beneath the surface? After dessert, John looked hopefully toward the house. So, are you still up for playing some more? Lily hesitated, but Tom could tell it wasn't from reluctance this time. There was an eagerness in her eyes, a readiness. Actually, she said, standing up, I'd love to. They moved inside, bringing their wine glasses and the last of the dessert. The music room looked different now in the evening light, less like a forgotten storage space and more like what it was meant to be. Tom switched on lamps while the others arranged chairs and cushions around the piano. This time, when Lily sat at the bench, there was no trace of the self-consciousness that had marked her earlier performance. She settled before the piano like she belonged there, adjusting the bench slightly, flexing her fingers. "Any requests?" she asked, looking around at her friends. "Play something you love," Tom suggested. "Something that means something to you." Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. Without further explanation, she began to play. The piece started softly, almost tentatively, like the first raindrops before a summer storm. But it quickly built, growing in complexity and emotion. Tom didn't recognize the music, but he recognized what it was doing to the room. To all of them. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips. Everyone was caught in the spell Lily was weaving with her hands. Tom watched her as she played, marveling at the transformation. This wasn't just Lily being good at something. This was Lily in her element, completely immersed in what she was doing. Her body swayed slightly with the music, her face expressing every emotion the piece contained: joy, longing, hope, sorrow. It was like watching someone speak their native language after years of struggling with foreign words. As the music filled the room, Tom thought about what she'd said at dinner, about finding missing pieces of herself. He wondered how many other pieces might be waiting to be rediscovered, in Lily, in himself, in all of them. How much of ourselves do we set aside as we grow up, as we face losses, as we make the compromises adulthood demands? The piece reached its climax, Lily's hands moving rapidly across the keys, creating cascades of notes that seemed impossible for just two hands to produce. Then gradually it settled back into the gentle melody it had begun with, like a river returning to its banks after a flood. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. No one wanted to be the first to break the spell. Finally, Kelly whispered, "What was that?" Lily's hands remained on the keys, as if reluctant to let go. "It's called Return to Life. My grandmother used to play it. She said it was the story of her life. All the ups and downs, joys and sorrows leading back to a place of peace." She looked up at Tom, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I haven't played it since. Since the hospital." Tom moved to sit beside her on the bench, taking her hand in his. "It was beautiful," he said. "Thank you for sharing it with us." The others murmured agreement, their faces showing they understood the significance of what they'd just witnessed. "Would you teach me?" Maya asked suddenly. "Just something simple. I always wanted to learn, but my parents couldn't afford lessons." Lily looked surprised, then pleased. "Of course. Come sit." Tom moved to make room as Maya took his place on the bench. He watched as Lily patiently showed her where to place her fingers, how to read the basic notes. There was a natural grace to her teaching, a kindness in how she guided Maya's clumsy attempts. "You're good at this," Tom observed. "Teaching." Lily smiled up at him. "I guess I am." One by one, the others wanted to try too. Dave claimed he had no musical bone in his body, but still grinned with pride when he managed to pick out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with Lily's guidance. Jun turned out to have some childhood lessons of his own and joined Lily in a simple duet that had everyone clapping. As the night went on, the music room became the heart of the house. People drifted in and out, brought more drinks, shared stories of their own childhood encounters with music, school choirs, abandoned guitar lessons, teenage garage bands. The old piano, silent for so long, seemed to soak up the sounds and laughter like a thirsty plant after drought. Tom found a moment when Lily was alone at the piano, just running through scales, her fingers remembering patterns they hadn't forgotten after all. "You're different when you play," he said, sitting beside her. "Not in a bad way, just more you somehow." She nodded, understanding what he meant. "Music was such a big part of who I was for so long. When I stopped playing, I think I locked away that part of myself, not on purpose, just as a way to cope." Her fingers continued their dance up and down the keys, muscle memory taking over. "I've missed her," Lily said quietly. "That version of me." "She's still here," Tom said, touching her cheek gently. "She always was." Lily leaned into his touch, her hands stilling on the keys. "I think I needed someone to remind me of that. Even if it started as a joke," Tom winced. "Not my finest moment." "Maybe not," she agreed with a small smile. "But it led to this, so I can't be too mad about it." From across the room, Dave called out, "Hey, piano lady, think you could figure out that song from that movie we all watched last month? The one with the killer soundtrack?" Lily laughed, the sound mixing with the lingering notes in the air. "I can try. As she turned her attention back to the piano, attempting to pick out the melody Dave was poorly humming, Tom watched her with new eyes. He'd always loved Lily, her kindness, her intelligence, her quiet strength. But tonight had shown him dimensions he hadn't known existed, depths he was only beginning to explore. He thought about what she'd said about finding missing pieces. Perhaps that's what love was at its best, helping each other become more fully ourselves, rediscovering the parts we've lost along the way. The night stretched on, filled with music and laughter and wine. And in the center of it all was Lily, no longer hiding, no longer holding back, but shining with the light of someone who has found her way home after a long absence. Tom had driven her to play the piano as a joke, and after 10 seconds he had regretted it. But now, watching her bloom before his eyes, he couldn't help but feel that some mistakes turn out to be the best things we ever do. Morning came to the lake house with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through half-drawn curtains and the distant calls of birds. Tom woke slowly, reaching across the bed only to find Lily's side empty. The sheets were cool to the touch. She'd been up for a while. He pulled on a t-shirt and sweats and padded barefoot through the quiet house. Most of their friends were still asleep after the late night, bedroom doors firmly shut against the morning light. But as Tom reached the main floor, he heard it. The soft, thoughtful notes of the piano played slowly as if the player was thinking through each sound. He paused in the hallway, listening. This wasn't the confident playing from last night. These were hesitant explorations, false starts, repeated phrases. The sound of someone finding their way back to something forgotten. Tom moved quietly to the doorway of the music room. Lily sat at the piano in her pajamas, hair pulled back in a messy bun, a notebook open on the piano bench beside her. She played a sequence of notes, frowned, made a mark in the notebook, tried again. "You're writing music," Tom said softly, not wanting to startle her. Lily looked up, a flash of surprise crossing her face before she smiled. "Trying to. It's been years." Tom entered the room, the wooden floor cool under his bare feet. "You used to compose?" She nodded, making room for him on the bench. "Nothing serious. Just little pieces here and there. My grandmother encouraged it." Tom sat beside her, looking at the notebook. It was filled with scribbled notes, crossed-out measures, question marks. The language of music, one he couldn't read but that clearly made sense to Lily. "I woke up with a melody in my head," she explained, playing a simple, wistful sequence of notes. "It wouldn't let me go back to sleep." "It's beautiful," Tom said. "Does it have a name?" Lily hesitated, a blush coloring her cheeks. "I'm calling it 10 seconds. Tom felt something catch in his chest. Because sometimes that's all it takes," she said. 10 seconds to change everything." She played the melody again, adding harmonies with her left hand that gave the simple tune depth and complexity. Tom watched her hands move across the keys, remembering how just yesterday he'd thought of her playing as something to be proven, tested, even mocked gently. How little he had understood. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. Lily's hand stilled on the keys. "For what?" "For turning something so important to you into a joke. For not knowing better." She turned to look at him fully, her expression serious. "How could you have known? I never told you. Never showed you." "Still," Tom insisted. "I should have..." "What? Been a mind reader?" Lily shook her head, a small smile lifting the corner of her mouth. "Tom, we all have parts of ourselves we keep hidden, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. You couldn't have known what the piano meant to me because I didn't let you know." Tom considered this. "Why didn't you? Tell me, I mean, we've been together over a year." Lily's fingers returned to the keys, playing soft, thoughtful chords as she gathered her words. At first, it just didn't come up. Then the longer we were together, the more it felt like, I don't know, like a missing piece I wasn't ready to explain. How do you tell someone that this huge part of your life just stopped? That you gave up something you loved because it hurt too much to keep it? A door closed somewhere in the house, followed by the sound of the shower running. Their friends were beginning to wake up. "After a while," Lily continued, "it felt like something I'd dealt with, put behind me. What was the point in bringing it up? But then we came here and you found out anyway." "Do you wish I hadn't?" Tom asked, suddenly worried. Lily's answer was to play the melody again, this time with more confidence, more feeling. "No," she said as the last notes faded. "No, I'm glad. It feels like finding a piece of myself I didn't realize was missing." From the doorway came a sleepy voice. Are we getting a morning concert too? Because that would be amazing with coffee. They turned to see Maya standing there in flannel pajamas, her hair a mess of bedhead. Lily laughed. No promises on the quality, but I'll play if someone makes coffee. Deal, Maya said, shuffling toward the kitchen. Within half an hour, the music room was once again the gathering place of the house. Friends drifted in with mugs of coffee and plates of toast, settling into the chairs and cushions from the night before. The morning light gave the room a different quality, clearer, more honest somehow. Play that thing you were working on, Tom encouraged when everyone was settled. Lily hesitated, then nodded. It's not finished, but here's what I have so far. She played her new composition. 10 seconds. In the light of day, with all their friends listening, it sounded even more beautiful, hopeful and melancholy at the same time, like someone looking back on a difficult journey from the safety of the other side. When she finished, the room was quiet except for the clink of coffee mugs and the distant lapping of lake water against the shore. That was yours? June asked, impressed. Like you wrote that? Lily nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Just this morning. It's still rough. It's amazing, Kelly said. I had no idea you composed too. Tom watched as Lily absorbed the compliment without deflecting it. Another small change from yesterday. Another step toward reclaiming the self she'd set aside. I used to, she said. I think I might start again. The simple statement hung in the air like a promise, not just to the others but to herself. The day unfolded lazily around them as weekend days at the lake house tended to do. Some went swimming, others hiked the nearby trails, and some just lounged on the deck with books and snacks. But throughout the day, people drifted back to the music room, where Lily could often be found at the piano. Sometimes she played requested songs, figuring them out by ear. Sometimes she worked on her composition, testing new sections, scribbling in her notebook. And sometimes she taught, showing Maya the basics of reading music, helping Jun remember pieces from his childhood lessons, even coaxing Dave through a simple blues progression. Tom found himself watching from doorways, from across the room, from beside her on the bench, watching not just what she was doing, but who she was becoming, or rather who she had always been beneath the surface. It was like seeing a flower bloom in time-lapse, beautiful and inevitable. In the late afternoon, while most of their friends were down at the lake, Tom found Lily alone in the music room. She wasn't playing, just sitting at the piano, looking at the keys with a faraway expression. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, joining her on the bench. She smiled at him, then looked back at the piano. I was thinking about what happens when we go home tomorrow. Back to real life. Tom understood her concern. The lake house had become a bubble, a safe space where Lily could rediscover her music without judgment or expectation. But what would happen when they returned to their apartment, their jobs, their routine? What do you want to happen? He asked. Lily ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. I don't want to lose this again, she said simply. Not now that I've found it. Tom covered her hand with his own. Then don't. It's not that simple, Lily sighed. We don't have a piano at home. I don't have time for lessons with teaching full time. And it's been so long, I've forgotten so much. We'll figure it out, Tom said, the beginning of an idea forming in his mind. If this matters to you, we'll find a way. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. You really mean that, don't you? Of course I do, Tom said. Lily, seeing you play, hearing your music, it's like meeting you all over again. I don't want you to lose that either. She leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that for a while, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. From outside came the distant sounds of their friends laughing by the lake, the occasional splash of someone diving into the water. You know, Tom said after a while, your grandmother would be proud of you. Lily was quiet for a moment. You think so? I know so, Tom said firmly. You're playing again, creating music, sharing it with others, teaching. How could she not be proud? Lily straightened up, blinking back sudden tears. Without a word, she positioned her hands on the keys and began to play. Not her new composition, not one of the popular songs their friends had requested, but something Tom hadn't heard before. Something that sounded like a lullaby and a goodbye all at once. When she finished, Tom didn't ask what the piece was. He didn't need to. The look on Lily's face told him everything. This was her grandmother's song, played in memory and in gratitude. She would be proud, Lily agreed softly. And I think she'd be happy I found my way back. As the day began to fade toward evening, their friends returned to the house, bringing the energy and noise of people who've spent a day in the sun and water. Dinner preparations began, bottles were opened, music played from someone's portable speaker. But through it all, the piano remained a center of gravity, drawing people in for impromptu sing-alongs, for quiet moments, for the simple joy of making music together. And at the heart of it was Lily, no longer hiding her talent but sharing it freely, her face alight with rediscovered passion. Tom watched it all unfold with a mixture of joy and wonder, still marveling at how something as simple as a teasing challenge could lead to such transformation. He had driven her to play the piano as a joke, and after 10 seconds he had regretted it. But what had started as regret had blossomed into something beautiful, a gift neither of them had expected. As night fell over the lake house, filling the music room with shadows and soft lamplight, Tom made a silent promise to himself. Whatever it took, however they needed to make it happen, he would help Lily keep her music in her life. Because now he understood. It wasn't just something she did. It was part of who she was. And loving her meant loving all of her, even the parts he was just beginning to discover. 6 months had passed since the weekend at the lake house. Winter had given way to spring, and now summer was beginning to hint at its arrival. Tom stood on the sidewalk outside their apartment building, keys in hand, watching the delivery truck pull away. He checked his phone. Lily's last text said she'd be home around 5 after meeting with a parent at school. It was just past 4 now. Perfect timing. Taking a deep breath, Tom jogged up the stairs to their 3rd-floor apartment. He unlocked the door and went straight to the living room, where a space had been cleared against the wall opposite the windows. The sunlight streamed in, highlighting the empty area that would soon be filled. The buzzer rang and Tom hurried to let the delivery men in. 2 burly guys in uniform nodded at him. "3rd floor," Tom said. "I'll show you." 20 minutes of careful, maneuvering tight corners and one near disaster on the stairs later, it was in place. Tom signed the delivery form, tipped the men generously, and closed the door behind them. Then he stood back and looked at it. The piano gleamed in the afternoon light. Not brand new, but beautifully restored, its dark wood polished to a soft glow. It wasn't as grand as the one at the lake house, just a simple upright. But Tom knew it wasn't the size that mattered. It was what it represented. He ran his fingers over the keys, making no sound. He couldn't play a note, but he could appreciate the craftsmanship, the potential waiting to be unlocked, like Lily had been all those months ago before he'd thoughtlessly pushed her to perform. Tom checked his watch. Almost 4:30. He had just enough time. When the door opened at 5:05, Tom was sitting on the couch pretending to read a book. His heart was pounding like he'd run a marathon. "I'm home," Lily called, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. "Sorry I'm late. Mr. Chen had a million questions about Annie's progress. And then the subway was." Her voice trailed off as she entered the living room and saw it, the piano. Her eyes widened, her bag slipped from her shoulder to the floor, and her mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. "Tom," she whispered. "What did you do?" He stood up, suddenly nervous. "Do you like it? It's not new. I found it at this place that restores old pianos." The guy said it's from the 1940s. It's been completely rebuilt inside, though, and they just finished refinishing the cabinet last week. I had them tune it this morning before they delivered it. He was rambling, he knew, but couldn't seem to stop. "If you don't like it, they said we can exchange it for a different model. Or if it's too big for the space, there are smaller ones. Or if you'd rather have a keyboard to start with, we can—" "Tom," Lily interrupted, taking a step closer to the piano. "It's beautiful." Relief flooded through him. "Yeah?" She nodded, her eyes never leaving the instrument. "Yeah." Lily moved toward the piano slowly, almost reverently. She reached out to touch the wood, running her fingers along its curves as if greeting an old friend. When she finally sat on the bench, adjusting it slightly as she had at the lake house, Tom held his breath. She placed her hands on the keys, closed her eyes for a moment, and began to play. The sound filled their small apartment, richer and warmer than Tom had imagined it would be. Lily played the piece she'd been composing at the lake house, 10 seconds. But it had grown in the months since then, developed into something more complex and complete. Tom recognized the core melody, but was amazed at how she'd expanded, at how she'd turned those initial moments of inspiration into a full musical story. When she finished, she kept her hands on the keys, her head bowed slightly. Tom couldn't see her face, but he saw a tear fall onto the ivory before her. "Lily," he said softly, worried he'd somehow upset her. "Is everything okay?" She turned to him then, and the look on her face took his breath away. Joy and gratitude and something deeper, more profound. "How?" she asked simply. "How did you do this?" Tom sat beside her on the bench. "I've been saving up and planning. I wanted it to be a surprise." "But why?" "It must have cost." "It doesn't matter what it cost," Tom said. "What matters is that music is part of you, Lily. It always has been. I just wanted to help you find it again." She looked at the piano, then back at him. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Tom said. "Just play. That's all I want." And she did. For hours that evening, Lily played, sometimes pieces Tom recognized from the lake house, sometimes classical works he'd never heard before, sometimes just improvising, letting her fingers find their way across the keys as if rediscovering an old, familiar map. Tom made dinner, and they ate on the couch instead of at their small dining table, the piano never far from Lily's gaze. After they'd eaten, she returned to it like it was magnetic, drawing her back. "I've been thinking," she said, as her hands drifted through a gentle melody, "about what you said at the lake house about teaching." Tom sat in the armchair near the piano. "What about it?" "I think I want to do it," Lily said. "Teach piano, I mean. Maybe just a few students to start on weekends or after school." Tom smiled, not surprised. He'd seen how natural she was with their friends, how patient and encouraging. "I think you'd be amazing at it." "Really?" She looked up from the keys, her expression hopeful. "You don't think it's silly to start something like this at my age?" "Silly?" Tom shook his head. "Lily, you're 30, not 90. And anyway, you're not starting something new. You're returning to something you've loved all your life." She considered this, her fingers still moving through the melody. "I'd need to practice more, brush up on my theory, maybe take some advanced classes myself." "Then do it," Tom said simply. "Whatever you need, I'm with you." Lily's playing shifted, becoming the song she'd composed at the lake house. "I've been working on this," she said. "Adding to it. I think it might be almost finished." As she played, Tom closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. It was beautiful, joyful and melancholy and hopeful all at once. When the final notes faded, he opened his eyes to find Lily watching him. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think it's perfect," Tom said honestly. "What will you call it?" Lily looked down at the keys, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'm still calling it 10 seconds, because that's how long it took. 10 seconds of playing for you to realize what you'd done, for both of us to start changing." "I had no idea," Tom said softly, "that 10 seconds could change so much." "Neither did I," Lily agreed. "But here we are." Here they were indeed. In the months since the lake house, subtle changes had rippled through their lives. Lily had joined a community choir, reconnecting with music in small ways even before the piano arrived. She'd dug out old composition notebooks from storage at her parents' house, pored over them with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. She'd started listening to classical music again, filling their apartment with sounds that Tom now realized had been missing before, and Tom had watched it all with wonder, seeing her become more fully herself with each passing day. It wasn't that she was different. She was still the woman he'd fallen in love with, still the dedicated teacher, the passionate reader, the person who always remembered everyone's birthdays. But now there was an added dimension to her, a completeness that hadn't been there before. The piano was already changing their lives in unexpected ways. Friends dropped by more often, gathering around it like they had at the lake house. Their small apartment had become a place of music and laughter and impromptu sing-alongs. Even their neighbor, Mrs. Hoffman, who complained about everything, had knocked on their door not to protest the noise but to tell Lily how much she enjoyed hearing her play. "I have something for you," Tom said, suddenly remembering. He went to their bedroom and returned with a small wrapped package. Lily took it curiously. "What's this for?" "It's not my birthday." "Just open it," Tom urged. She unwrapped it carefully to reveal a leather-bound book with blank music paper inside. On the cover, embossed in simple gold letters, was a single word: compositions. "Oh, Tom," Lily breathed, running her fingers over the cover. "For your music," he said. "Your real music, not just notes scribbled in notebooks. It deserves better." Lily opened the book, flipping through the empty pages that waited to be filled. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything. The piano, this book, but most of all, for pushing me that day. Even if it was a joke, even if you regretted it. Best mistake I ever made," Tom said with a smile. Lily turned back to the piano, placing the composition book on the stand. "Maybe I'll start by writing down 10 seconds properly. It should be the first piece in the book." "I'd like that," Tom said. As Lily began to play again, working through her composition and pausing occasionally to make notations in her new book, Tom watched with a full heart. 6 months ago, he'd driven her to play the piano as a joke, and after 10 seconds he had regretted it. But that moment of regret had led them here, to this apartment filled with music, to Lily reclaiming a vital part of herself, to both of them discovering that sometimes the things we hide away are the very things that make us whole. Outside, the city continued its usual bustle and flow. Inside, in their small apartment now centered around an old, beautifully restored piano, Tom and Lily had found something precious, not just music, but the understanding that love at its best helps us become more fully ourselves, not less. That the people who truly care for us want to know all of who we are, even the parts we've hidden away. And as the summer evening settled around them, with Lily's music flowing through the open windows into the world beyond, Tom knew with absolute certainty that those 10 seconds of regret had been worth every moment that followed.